Ptah. So what you have in Africa and ancient Egypt are these concepts of the Holy Trinity long before Christianity. For example, Amen, who we talked about earlier, is married to a sister named Mut. And they have a son who I think's name is Kansu. And Sekhmet is married to Ptah. And they have a son. And then, of course, you have the most famous trinity of them all, and that is Asar, or Osiris, Auset, or Isis, and the child Heru, or Horus. And this is by far the most significant of the Trinity, and probably the one that was the most well known when the Greeks and Romans invaded Africa. Quickly, here's the story. One day, a loud voice called out into the world that the king of all has come. And that king was called Asar. He's described as black as ebony and the most handsome man alive. He was born in a place called Ethiopia, which meant, according to the Greeks, the land of the burnt-faced people. And he was brought into the world to bring civilization into the world. And the next day, his son, Set was born. Set was identified with the color red, which is the color of the Egyptian desert. And these two brothers fought from the beginning. It was symbolic, like light, night and day, good and evil, this symbolic battle. And then a sister was born, a woman named Auset. And Auset and Asar got married. And this was the source of another piece of conflict. I wonder if these people are moving, we can sit down. Come on, let's sit over there and I'll tell you this quick story. A weapon, but a flute. He plays music and he goes all over Asia. And he brings civilization to all of these parts of the world. Africans are the world's great, showed how to make life easier. They introduced the ability to move large objects in stone. They introduced calendars, agricultural science. They came and they elevated life. Where Europeans have gone, for the most part, death and destruction has followed. Genocide, rape, people wiped out. Africans came to these same places and brought gifts, and they were treated like gods and goddesses. So after Asar finishes his mission, he comes back to Egypt to celebrate. But in the meantime, he has left his wife in charge. And this infuriates Set, who feels like that should have been his position. Auset is very important. The Greeks call her Isis. But the name Auset is very important because it means the throne. And you see her in the form of an African woman with a throne on top of her head. She did some very important things. For example, she introduced the concept of domesticity. She invented the wedding ring. And she helped introduce the concept of agriculture into the world. And she was Asar's significant other, because after all, what good is a king without a queen? Now, Set is mad, and he plans to seek revenge on his brother Asar as soon as he comes back. So he concocts a conspiracy, and he has a big party. And he invites 72 conspirators. The number 72 must have some significance. And he had a magnificent wooden chest studded with precious jewels, and he had it designed to fit the body of Osiris, of Asar. Couldn't fit anybody else. So Asar is invited to the party, and Auset decided not to go. I just don't think she had a good vibe about it. But Asar went anyway, and as soon as the party begins, and I'm paraphrasing now, Set says, this is a party for, I'm welcoming home my brother. And anybody who can fit in this magnificent chest can have it. But of course, it's only been designed to fit the body of Asar. All the 72 conspirators get in one after the other, and it doesn't fit any of them. And finally, it's Asar's turn. And he thinks twice about it, but says, after all, Set is my brother, what could go wrong? Now, I can hear, just as plain as day, Auset saying, baby, I don't feel good about this, don't get in that box. Knowing how hard-headed some of us are, I know we jumped in the box anyway, especially after having a little bit to drink. He jumps in the box, and as soon as he jumps in the box, Set nails the box shut. And he takes the box and throws it into the Nile River where he suffocates and drowns. Now, Auset, who had every reason to say, I told you, doesn't do that. She tears her clothes and rips her hair out in grief, but she follows that box. And she goes all the way to what is now called Lebanon and finds the box. And sure enough, Asar is in there. So she takes the box back to Egypt and opens the lid and brings life back to Asar. Now, for some reason, she goes away. Why, I don't know. Maybe she had to work a double shift or something. She leaves the box in a swamp. And just as she leaves, Set stumbles on the box because he's out hunting by the light of the full moon. And he says, "That's Asar, but he's dead. Why, how did he get here?" He says, "This time I'm going to do it right." And he takes the body and cuts it up into 14 pieces and scatters the pieces all over Egypt. The 14th piece, his phallus, is thrown into the Nile River, where tradition says it was swallowed by a catfish. I stopped eating catfish once I heard the story. Auset comes back and finds out what happened, and she's upset again. But she doesn't give up. She and her sister, a woman named Nebet, go all over Egypt, and they find 13 of the missing pieces and wrap them together into the form of a mummy, and gathers wings, puts it on a table, called a bier, puts it on a table, gathers wings because she's also a magician. She can fly like a bird, or take the form of a bird, and she flutters over the body and becomes pregnant. How could that be? Because his organ has already been cut off. And this is the first time we can find what we call an immaculate conception, a virgin birth. And they have a child. And the child's name is Heru. The Greeks call him Horus. Remember I told you the names ending in is are Greek? Heru is a traditional African name, and that's where we get the word hero from. And he does become a hero. His whole mission in life is to avenge his father's murder and to reclaim his legacy. And he and Set have a series of battles in which Heru loses his eye. And this is what we call the third eye. And he is just about to kill his uncle, his uncle Set for what he did to his father. And just at that point, Auset, who is more wrong than anybody else, intervenes, and she refuses to allow this to happen. And so you have many, many interesting stories there that we are to hear later on. For example, a brother slaying another brother. Cain and Abel. You have an immaculate conception. You have a virgin birth. You have the concept of divine forgiveness. Because Auset says, no matter what he's done, he's your uncle. He's your brother. He is you. And we will not have that. All of these concepts come out of Africa. You can even see, if you pull out a dollar bill, the eye of Heru on top of the pyramid. So all of these concepts have African roots. The very basis of all the world's major religions have their roots in Africa. The problem is, we have been told that Africa is the worst place it ever was, and so we tend to reject our African roots. On top of that, Egypt, in a sense, has been taken out of Africa. The modern age of Egyptology began with the advent of Napoleon Bonaparte from Corsica, who became Emperor of France. And Napoleon leads an army to Egypt in 1798. But his army is different than all the others because he brings with him a bunch of scientists and artists and engineers. And these French scholars were able to see just how much the ancient world owed Egypt. But 1798 is also the height of the transatlantic slave trade. And Africans are being taken out of Africa by the millions every year. And it seems to me that the philosophy must have been, if you want to make a good slave, you must take away these people's history, take away their self-worth, to the point that they will say, thank God for slavery, because it got us out of Africa. And that is the mindset that many of us have. And so for the Western world today, Egypt is not in Africa, it is in the Near East or the Middle East. But I've been in Egypt 22 times, and it's been in Africa every time. I've not heard about it relocating to another place. So part of the reason we put so much emphasis on Egypt is that we are determined to restore Egypt to its rightful African heritage. So it's a very powerful story. And really the heroic figure in the story is not Asar, but it's Auset, the black woman, who brings her husband to life twice, who rules effectively in his reign. And these concepts are very powerful, especially when you see the challenges that we face in our community today with family issues and what have you. That is not the African tradition. Everybody understand the story? That's called the Osirian drama, and it was repeated in a dramatic fashion every year in Kemet for thousands of years. And they would say, at the culmination of the Osirian drama, Asar has risen. Just as we say today, Christ has risen in the Easter in the tradition of Easter. All right? Let's look at these pieces.